Hi, welcome to another BioDevils podcast. And today I'm happy to talk about some more Onimusha, because when am I not ever happy to talk about some Onimusha? Uh, well, with that said, it's a small podcast, but I did want to focus on the trailer with a couple of buddies of mine to talk about what we've noticed in the trailer and a couple of other related topics around this new upcoming Onimusha game. So with me, I am joined by Sir Brandel. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, I am here talking about Onimusha.
And also with Singh. Go ahead and introduce yourself.
I pray this game doesn't suck anything other than souls.
Okay. Well, with that in mind, very first thing that I just wanted to kind of get out the way is what are your guys' thoughts on the announcement for this game?
It took me by surprise for starters because I'm like, Onimusha? Yeah, because it looks like a Neo type game, no, a
Hmm.
Team Ninja game, honestly. Just from the gameplay alone, I'm like, hold up, man. Do they have staff from Team Ninja work on this game? Because I'm like, it didn't look Onimusha until I saw the aesthetics of Onimusha.
Yeah.
But they changed the art style to be like this, colorless palette again. So
Hmm.
almost all the games look the same nowadays.
Yeah, I think for me, when the trailer first popped up, like it didn't really click in. Like even when the souls started to appear, it didn't really click in until the Gauntlet like just showed up. So for me, it just was like a huge surprise.
Yeah, I've definitely heard that a lot. Was Gauntlet shows up and like it just instantly clicked with people, especially who were like longtime fans of the series. It just clicked as soon as they saw like the character doing the pose and absorbing all the souls and stuff like that. It was like at that moment they knew like, oh, Onimusha is back, right? Um, I I do like the way that they have this game kind of designed based off of the trailer. For me, it feels like a very return to form, so to speak. Um, More so like I guess like the first two Onimusha games, where we've got more of this like horror aesthetic to it, where it's very dark and drab, which is polar opposite to like games like Onimusha 3 and Onimusha Dawn of Dreams, which went for a more colorful color palette, or more vibrant color palette, I should say, right? Which, on the one hand, I could understand why people would like that. But I also think that, um, at least for me, it is way more appealing to see this new art direction that they're going for, which kind of feels a little bit new, but also kind of feels like a return to form, at least in my opinion. But I don't know how you guys feel about that.
I think to me, it kind of goes beyond like the opposite direction. Like it feels like it's even darker than how the original played out, at least from what we've seen. I don't know if that's going to change when they start showing off more environments, if there are any.
Mm. I don't know if Brendan has any countering opinion to that or not.
I'm sorry, what was it?
I was just saying
Okay.
that, like, for me, I really like the new art style, because for me at least, it kind of feels like it's kind of a return to form, even though it is more like some other uh, modern samurai games like Neo, for example, right?
Yeah, to me, from a aesthetic standpoint, with the are you into all that whatnot, I couldn't tell what it was immediately
Mm.
because how all of their games honestly do look the same. Like if it wasn't for the fact that I know a character or know one little aspect that's different from another game, though, I could say like all these games look exactly the same. Because like they go for the same like pseudo photorealism, though, which I'm like is getting kind of boring. I want to see something different, with the art styles, which is something that I can at least appreciate Monster Hunter Rise for because like
Mm.
even though it's an RE engine, though, they went for a different aesthetic compared to the other RE engine games. It's like they went for this whole photorealism shit. So
Is
I just want
that
to see something different for once.
is that the same case with Street Fighter 6? Is that also on RE Engine?
Yes.
So like I guess
And I'm
those are
not
like the
thinking.
two outliers then I guess with the engine art style maybe.
But even
I
with
mean, you
Street
could.
Fighter Six, though, is not. Yeah, they definitely stand out a lot more compared to other ones, though. But it's just like a art style issue I have with that game, not necessarily the graphical detail.
Mm.
But that's like a
You
whole separate
could.
issue I have with it.
I was just gonna say, you could also kind of make that argument with Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, since
Yeah,
despite how simple that game looks, that is also RE Engine.
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Another one.
Uh, cuz I guess you could I don't know if you could really make the argument for like Kunitsugami, right? Cuz Kunitsugami is very like similar in art style, so I could see how maybe people would have gotten confused like, "Oh, this is just more like Kunitsugami, right?" If they just showed the Capcom logo on it only, right? Which I don't think that's how they opened up with that trailer, if I recall. Um,
Now, we didn't even know it was a Capcom game until like it clicked in that it was Onimusha. Like
right.
the logo came in after the fact.
Right. So like I guess in like in hindsight or after the fact, right? It's maybe you could make that comparison where it kind of looks a little similar to Kunitsugami because Kunitsugami only came out what this year, earlier this year, right?
Hmm.
And it arguably looks very similar, has a similar aesthetic, has similar environments right now, right? So um, so I could definitely get that argument where like the the art style and the overall design between RE Engine games is very similar. Too similar to the point where it's a little difficult to tell what is what, right? Until you actually see like a distinct feature, like kind of like how you mentioned, Brandon.
Hmm.
Um, that said, how do you all feel about the fact that this game is also slated not very far from now, 2026. I mean, we're at the tail end of 2024, practically at 2025 right now, right? So only like a year away from launch, so to speak.
But
So
going by their other games, this is actually the furthest we have to wait for a announced game and then the release date. Because like
mm,
even some of the older titles, right? At most, we had to wait around 9 months. We waiting a whole fucking year.
yeah,
Like, and they
And
not
that's
only
just
announced it this year, right? So
no, I was gonna say we're also assuming that this is going to be early 2026 and not late
yeah,
2026 too.
yeah.
yeah,
I wait. They let Capcom like still release the games like in their early year, and in some cases in the middle. But most likely it's going to be either a January or a March release around that time frame.
yeah. They do tend to release games around that time frame, like really early in the year. Um,
Yeah, like next year we get Monster Hunter in I think February. So like they let the release the games very early in the year.
yeah, yeah. So like I would assume maybe January, only because like we have had like the last time Capcom released something related to Onimusha was in January with the Warlords HD remaster, right around the same time that Resident Evil 2 remake was coming out. So I feel like January makes sense, like January 2026, but we could also see like March or April of 2026, which is also kind of like a favorite release window for them, right?
Hmm.
Okay, so moving on from that, we don't have any like concrete like details on the story, but I am gonna pull up just a really quick excerpt from it's in both the trailer and the official website about the game's story, and I just kind of want to get your all's take on that, along with just what you can gather out of the trailer itself. But while I'm pulling that up, where do you think we're going to be taken with this story so far, just based off of what we've seen so far?
This is not my field of expertise when it comes to Japanese history, so I got absolutely nothing.
I mean, just like based off of like the games strictly, not so much Japanese history, you know?
I mean, in fairness though, they go hand in hand with this game because like the settings are based from Japanese history, right? But obviously they abridge it. So like from that standpoint, I just had no idea where they're going to go with the story because it takes place in the Edo period.
Yeah, it is.
You know,
Okay, so I do have it. I have
with
the
the
excerpt pulled up here, so I could just read it out really quick, so that way we're kind of all on the same page. So Onimusha Way of the Sword, fight through bloodbaths of intense swordplay action, explore the historic Japanese capital of Edo era Kyoto, twisted by a malevolent clouds of malice. With every stage cloaked in mystery, danger, and intrigue, battle against monstrosities from the underworld known as Genma in a tale of dark fantasy. Follow the tale of a samurai who wields the only Oni Gauntlet, a mystical artifact that grants its bearer the power to slay Genma. Through gritty, blood-soaked brawls, he searches for his reason to fight. What fate awaits at the end of his path? So that's what we have just on the story so far, right?
this
So
sounds like your typical invasion from the demons.
yeah. Um, so I'm kind of a little intrigued by this, and I am like talking about this in my own like standalone video, just breaking down the trailer and just talking about my excitement for this game. Um, I am I'm like really curious where they're going to be taking this story, because what I'm not really sure about is if this is like, if they're intending for this game to be a reboot of the series, or if they're continuing off of Onimusha 3 and Onimusha Dawn of Dreams. And I say that only because of the fact that, like, even though Dawn of Dreams in Japan it's known as Shin or New Onimusha, Capcom does have kind of the tendency to just connect everything anyway and just not really take into consideration how certain established lore plays along with newer games, and they just kind of just go with it. They just say fuck it, release the game, and we'll worry about lore later, right? Um, and that's kind of where I'm a little bit more intrigued about, because like I have no idea if they're gonna consider like Dawn of Dreams canon, or if they're going off of the alternate ending from Onimusha 3. Not necessarily retconning Dawn of Dreams, but just creating a separate timeline because of it, right? Or if they're just picking directly up after Dawn of Dreams, which I don't necessarily think is a bad idea either. It just, how are they going to do this, if they're going one way or the other, right? And I think that the key thing here is also just the fact that they're not saying that this new character that we're going to be playing as is gotten like a brand new gauntlet. They're mentioning, and I quote, the only gauntlet, as if like this is Samanosuke's gauntlet from the previous games, right? So like I don't know what to do with this information, but like you get where I'm like coming from with like this kind of confusion with like where we might be going with the story.
Mm-hmm. And how much it
Well, I
going?
mean, even if they do go with the reboot route, it wouldn't necessarily be the first time they've done that. Uh, like, you can pipe up some examples. Like, the first one that comes off the top of my head would probably be Strider for sure, because we
Mm.
had that one game back from, what was it?
2014
20,
by
yeah,
WLX.
2014. Yeah, it was basically a full-on reboot, but it was built off of like lore that existed in the previous two games.
Okay, yeah.
Like just doing its own thing, but it was kind of playing it off that.
I'm
Yeah, in this case though, being that one, this is done by Capcom and not a different developer, they might actually just make it a recall, a reboot sequel where yeah, the previous games happened though, but we starting fresh comparisons. The timeline of events from Onimusha 1, 2, and 3, and I guess Dawn of Dreams. I haven't played that one, so I can't tell you what happened in that one. To this one, what's it called? Way of Sword or Samurai?
Way of the
Yeah,
Sword.
so since a lot of things have changed since from then to now, though, they can actually safely do a soft reboot while established or acknowledging the established lore. Kind of like how God of War has done it.
Yeah, to me at least, from what we know so far, I would definitely put this, if this were in the same timeline, definitely at the furthest point that they could.
Mhm.
So it would definitely be after Dawn of Dreams, I would think. But how far, it's really hard to gauge by it.
So
With that in mind, though, I got a question.
yeah.
I doubt this will happen though, right? But if we do see returning characters like Somonosuke, because for some reason he's in four, and the the lead character in what's his name, Soki or whatever from Dawn Dreams,
Yeah.
do you think it's a possibility that we see them since they're it's likely that one is immortal and the other one is just refuse to die?
Well, I think you're getting Somonosuke mixed up with this other dude by the name of Tenkai.
well, so I have some speculation on like what might be happening, and I'm gonna kind of pull some history here too, right? So I think Samanosuke or Tenkai, because I do think like regardless of if Dawn of Dreams is canon or not, like Samanosuke will end up being Tenkai, because I think like that's just gonna work regardless, in lore, right? Regardless of like if they do an alternate timeline or whatever, right? I don't think we'll see Soki, and the reason being is that Soki ends up just disappearing. I don't want to say he dies per se because like technically he's a reincarnated Oni, so there's this possibility he might be alive, and they kind of allude to that at the end of the game. But it's never actually confirmed if he's actually alive or not. So that's why I don't want to say he's dead per se. But I don't think we'll see him again. What I do think is like Tenkai is probably a likely possibility. Another character that I do think we would see return, and this time for the first time in a mainline game at least, is Musashi. There's a couple of reasons for that, and we'll kind of get into more detail about this a little bit later. Is the gameplay surrounding the game? There's kind of hints of like some dual sword, like just regular dual sword action that you didn't get in the previous games, at least not in the way that they're showing off in this game, where we get like these dual sword takedowns, which again we'll kind of talk about a little bit later. But between that and also just the way that the character is dressed in the trailer, right? I strongly think that we're going to see Musashi come back, and we're going to see a retelling of kind of the story that we got from the anime, but done in game form and done with the lore from the games that's already been established. Because that's kind of the one thing I think was the biggest issue with the anime, is that none of the established lore applied to that anime. Whereas with this game, it can, but there's also the big concern that they might also apply some of the lore that they kind of made up in the anime, right? Which I don't know how to feel about per se. Which I don't know how you
Yeah, I
guys
feel
feel
like they're gonna have to do a lot of work to kind of reconcile both cases if they go that route.
about. Yeah,
Like,
I'll let you take this one. Yeah.
no, like I was just gonna add too much. It's like basically like the biggest point of contention is like what happens when you start overusing the Oni Gauntlet. Like, yeah, Dawn of Dreams kind of established that maybe overusing it isn't such a smart idea, but we only know that because Tenkai kind of suspected at the very least that if he kept using it, obviously he would lose control of himself, but obviously we never really see that come to pass. But in the anime, like they don't even make it ambiguous as to what happens when like Musashi outright uses the gauntlet. Like he has to be careful practically every time. So like how do exactly are they gonna like kind of reconcile that when up until now we've seen that hey, like you can freely use it, just don't overuse it, I guess. So
I don't know if Brandon wants to throw in his 2 cents on this or not, because I would go, but
Uh, Someone else gets a fraud, and well, I mean, I haven't played Down and Dream, so I got nothing to add to that. But as far as like the characters losing control if they a Gauntlet user, I mean, like I guess technically you saw that in the anime, but like Inosuke himself didn't necessarily went through that route. I mean, hell, the man fused with himself to get stronger, so like I don't know about that one.
I well, and Blade Warriors is partial canon, and that's the other thing because like him disappearing and then reappearing by the time Blade Warriors happens because that's about like 13 to 15 years after Onimusha 1 and about like 3 to 5 years after 2. Um, it's it's a it's a thing of like, well, okay, he disappeared to try to learn how to control the gauntlet, but I think my question then becomes like, okay, like is it easier for him to control just because he was the one that was given that power, whereas like if somebody else just decides to slap that shit on, is it harder for them to control, and do they have a easier time to like lose their like humanity? Because something you can actually see in the trailer as well as like this character, which again I don't know if is Musashi, but I have a strong feeling it is. You can kind of see glimpses of like their arm and like their chest kind of getting corrupted. I don't know if you guys have seen that at all, but I could definitely post screen caps if you guys want to see that stuff.
I mean, yeah,
Yeah, like I've
it's
seen glimpses of it, but at the same time, it's like, is this supposed to be the result of using the gauntlet, or is this something else that we just aren't aware of yet?
Yeah, I mean, end of 3, right? Samanosuke seals Nobunaga's soul in the gauntlet, right? Um, there is that possibility that maybe doing that also could have corrupted the gauntlet. I mean, we don't really know.
Yeah, the tricky part is like we're still operating under the assumption that it's that gauntlet specifically, because we don't know if there are like, well, we know they can make other gauntlets for obvious reasons, but we don't know if there are any others still out in the wild.
Yeah.
do you think it would be more preferable just to have separate gauntlets instead of just using Inosuke? Considering like he built that shit up, right? Like no one else should be able to use it, in my opinion.
I think I think that's a good point. Like I think because of the fact that like okay, Jacques in 3 got a different gauntlet, right? Um I think that there was always that possibility that there should have been like other gauntlets usable in this franchise. Because like you could argue that well because Samanosuke prevented the time folds in 3, right? That maybe the shit that happens in Jacques' timeline technically never happened because of it, right? And therefore Jacques' gauntlet would then become somebody else's gauntlet, right? Um, but then again, right, you could also argue, well, we don't know how many like Oni spirits are floating around or even fully living Oni because like you have to remember too, like we have like Onimusha 2, for example, right? Where Jubei Yagyu, at least the one that's in Onimusha 2, he's half human, half Oni, and he just gets an Oni mark that allows him to absorb soul, like Genma souls, through his hand rather than using a gauntlet where he doesn't have to worry about like becoming full Oni per se because he already is Oni, right?
Well, the tricky thing is I don't know how much of that is basically due to the way he's born or just because of his mom. So there is that.
Right, right. So, and I did post a screenshot where you can kind of see this character's arm. And
Oh my god.
here's another one where you can kind of see like there's something going on with his arm. It kind of
Yeah, veins are
reminds
sticking
me
out. What the fuck? They're
like
glowing.
it kind of reminds me of like Onimusha Warlords, right? When like Samanosuke first gets the gauntlet, right? You can kind of see like parts of his arm are burnt or whatever, and I'm wondering if they're kind of just playing off of that design maybe, and that's why it looks that way. But if you look at like this character's chest, right? Like he's he's got some like Dragon's Dogma shit going on where like he might be missing his heart, right? so like so I don't know.
I don't think, in the case of Somanosuke, I don't think it's him being burnt per se. It's more like the gauntlet assimilating him. 'Cause, you know, he can transform into a demon, right? So I'm guessing like it's like a corruption, a corrosion type of deal.
Yeah.
Same for this guy here, because like his arms are like the veins are sticking out of his body. So I imagine like the gauntlet, like the more he uses it or more it feeds off demon blood, he's transforming into whatever the hell is going on with him.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, and just looking at the character himself cuz I want to kind of like go back to that as well. Um like I have no idea at all if again if this is Musashi like for certain, but I have a strong feeling it is, and I don't know if you guys can kind of see the resemblance in that. Because I did notice a couple of posts where people were saying like it does kind of look like Toshiro Mifune, which is the actor's likeness that they used for the anime. Um, for me, it's a little bit hard to tell because they used they use that likeness for the anime, and the art style is completely different for that as opposed to like a game, right? Where they might have made like some subtle changes here or there, right, to differentiate between that iteration and the game iteration, right?
Hmm.
I
So
mean, if it is, and they go with the
mm,
anime being canon to like the main franchise, it would like be. I'm trying to think. It would definitely kind of go into more details to how like Musashi had the gauntlet in the first place and why he is the way he is in the anime. So there is that, but I don't know if they're still going with that direction or if this is just something else entirely.
right, I mean like in theory, right? Because like I know there's speculation about like okay, well like if we're talking about the anime at least, right? Where like he knew there's speculation that he kind of already knew about the gauntlet beforehand and maybe he might have used it beforehand, which is why he knows so much about it. Um but on the other hand, I don't necessarily know if like because what I'm thinking is it's not necessarily that the anime is canon, right? I think that they're just going to take story bits from that, just things that people might have liked or things that they think are kind of inconsequential to add into a new Onimusha game, right? Um, for
Question is though, do you
yeah,
want it to be canon?
ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, um, I put it like this: like I like the anime, um, but I don't necessarily want it to be canon. Um, the reason why I don't necessarily want it to be canon is because I've always wanted Musashi to be in Onimusha as a playable character, like for a mainline Onimusha, that is, because he was playable in Blade Warriors, right? But the thing is that I've always had this idea that if Musashi was playable in an Onimusha game, right? Like I feel like we would kind of be going through the process of him like going through the details of the Book of Five Rings, of his like book of philosophy of philosophical teachings on his like fighting style, right? Um, and it goes through like I think it's fire, earth, water, wind, and void. I believe were the elements in the Book of Five Rings. Um, And I always felt like, okay, like if we were to get to like a story of Musashi, by the end, he would become the most broken like character within the franchise, being able to like make his own like Oni weapon, which we've never actually seen before, which I would assume would be like the Bishaman ore, because you know he defeats Kojiro Sasaki in real life with a an ore that he crafted or like kind of like shaved into the shape of a sword, you know. Um, so I feel like you could kind of make that work in the lore of Onimusha, where like okay, he like crafted his own like Oni weapon, and it's got the element of void, whatever that might be, right? So that's kind of why I wouldn't want the anime to be canon, because that shit never happened, is what I'm saying. So that's what I'm getting at. Uh, but go on. I didn't know if
No,
you.
nothing good.
Oh,
No.
okay. Okay. Um, yeah. So I'm not sure. That's kind of where I'm sitting at with the story, but like I think yeah, I don't know, because this could be a completely different guy, you know, like this might not necessarily be Musashi, but I do think that like the time period adds up too, which is also part of the reason why it would make sense for Tenkai or Samanosuke to be alive. Um, Actually, I have another theory I want to run by you guys. How would you feel if Samanosuke, like, or rather Tenkai, as he would be known in this game, right? He's an old man and he shows up. However, he passes along the gauntlet to Musashi to basically continue that task of trying to seal away the gauntlet. Because by the end of Onimusha 3 and by the end of Dawn of Dreams, he was supposed to seal away the gauntlet. Evidently, that's not working out because we have another Onimusha game, right? But I don't know. How would you guys feel about like it's kind of like a sort of passing the torch, so to speak, on what Samanosuke was supposed to do originally?
And before, passing the torch. I haven't played the game, so I got nothing. But
Well, just
I
in
mean,
general, because like in 3 and in Dawn of Dreams, he was out on this quest to seal away the gauntlet, and he never actually did.
well, in terms of passing the torch, though, I think could be ideal to have someone Nosuke as like a mentor figure to
Mm.
train other people to use the gauntlet properly. No, because like if you can't seal the gauntlet or stop the gauntlets being made, then you might as well just train people who has one to properly wield it without the risk of going apeshit if that's their actual plot point and stuff like that, right? Like since you learn from his mistakes, I
Yeah,
feel. Bro, become Uncle Samanosuke.
making me picture Uncle Dante. But what
Yeah.
about you, Sing?
Honestly, I see him more as like if he's had this like if he's had the gauntlet for this long and then is still having trouble like trying to like seal it or whatever. Like I could imagine him just getting fed up and then just dumping it off to someone and saying, "Not my problem anymore." So, not that he would be
Pull
that
Luke
kind of person,
Skywalker,
but
just toss that thing.
I mean, it's not like you can toss it into a volcano or something like that.
Oh, one last thing that I wanted to kind of bring up in regards to the story, because I also brought this up on Twitter. The gauntlet itself, it looks like it kind of went back to like a level 2 state, and I don't know if you guys have noticed that, where it's like it's not fully gold like it was at the end of Dawn of Dreams, and I kind of have some speculation on that as well, but I want to know if you guys have actually noticed that about the gauntlet this time around.
It could be a new evolution of it. Because like it's partial gold here, right? So I imagine it goes fully gold when it hits max level. or it evolves into another color.
Well,
That or it goes backwards, where it goes from gold to black.
yeah, because that's the thing. In the old games, it went from like this like kind of like this gunmetal black to gold and gunmetal black to just fully gold, and then by 3, it went black and red. Um, and then later on, because of Dawn of Dreams, it goes back to gold because of it losing all of the power that it had in it, and the only thing that it's containing at that point is Nobunaga's soul, which ends up getting released. So that way, it because of the fact that Fortinbras from 1 gets revived. But it still ended up staying gold by the end of Dawn of Dreams, and I'm wondering if, well, two things I'm wondering here is, one is it because of the fact that it hadn't been used for so long that it's now starting to revert back to the original color that it was in, or if this is just a kind of like a new state and it's gonna go maybe eventually back to that black and red, or maybe a completely new like evolution, like you said. The other thing though is that like it kind of makes me wonder, are they even going to have like weapon and gear transformation like in the old games prior to Dawn of Dreams, because Dawn of Dreams completely did away with that, right? So that's where I'm really curious to see too, you know. But oh,
I got nothing to add.
oh, go on.
Said nothing to add on that one.
Gotcha. So I guess we can move on to the RE engine in particular in this case. Um, which iteration of the RE engine do you think they're going to be using for this game? Because they didn't actually leave a logo or like the icon for the RE engine at the end of the trailer.
See, if I took an educated guess, given how the production is, either it's going to be 2.0 of the original, or it's going to be Rex. Most likely 2.0, because Rex is still new. I'm not sure if Monster Hunter Wilds is using Rex or not. I gotta look that up.
From what I could gather, it just seems like it's still like your standard RE engine. So I'm talking about Wilds, but for this game, maybe part of the reason why we still have to wait for it to come out for a bit is it might be using Rex, but even then, like, would it make sense to use it for this kind of game? Because like when it comes to Onimusha, open world is not one of the things it's known for. And if it's not open world, like you could easily just get away with still using like your standard RE engine.
Well, that's the thing, right? It doesn't have to be open world, right? They could use it to make a linear game, but can add it more, a lot of stuff in it, right? Condense like a bunch of enemies or a bunch of stuff in it, right? They don't have to make an open world, right? But they can add a lot more to the linear level design because of
Minuscule
Rex.
details too, like stuff that
Yeah.
you might not be able to do or get away with the standard RE engine. I have another theory on that though, because you notice how they only slated this game for PS5, Xbox Series S and X, as well as PC, and they didn't mention PS4, Xbox One, or Switch, for example, right? Although I doubt
Most of
that
the
will.
games,
I doubt we'll.
most of the games that now have been only on next generation, so that's not a surprising detail. But go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say though, like, because even for Capcom, that's a little strange because usually they do announce like, oh hey, there's a PS4 and an Xbox One version coming, or eventually they will announce one, right? Um, and I have this theory that maybe this time around they're actually gonna focus on releasing it for the current gen, and especially now that we have like, for example, the PS5 Pro, right? They're gonna want to try to utilize that hardware. So in which case they might be using the REX engine, hence why the late release date of 2026 as opposed to like somewhere in 2025, right?
All right, I looked at the list of the games again. The games that are on PS4 aren't graphically demanding, with the exception of maybe Street Fighter 6, because like the single player content is on 30 FPS.
Mm-hmm.
So considering what they're doing, Onimusha and whatnot, it's a safe bet that yeah, this is the reason why it's not on PS4, for example, because that's a platform Capcom has no issue releasing games on compared to Xbox One.
Yeah.
It'll also depend on what implementation of ray tracing they're doing and what target frame rates they're aiming for.
Yeah, because judging from how it looks, though, there's no way the PS4 can keep it at lock 60 FPS with the detail they're going for.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah.
depends on what they also use for ray tracing, because like I think right now, like there's really not much they do with it outside of lighting. Like yeah, they have reflections, but I think outside of Dead Rising, which only was limited to like maybe a couple of mirrors, uh, ray tracing reflections are not that great in terms of internal resolution. It's like very low quality.
Mm-hmm.
So again, like in terms of ray tracing, they may just focus on lighting, but even then, like I would imagine they would have that option to turn it off just in exchange for higher frame rates. But what those targets would be is anyone's guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't really say on like performance and stuff. I would imagine they would try to do similar things to what they've done with previous releases. Um, so it for me it's hard to say, but I do feel like it's maybe kind of a look into what we can expect with this game, where this might be one of the few exceptions where they do not release it for previous gen and just focus strictly on the current gen, right? Which I'm all for. I think they should be doing that to begin with. Then it also makes me wonder, like, okay, like, well, we know this game is going to be 4K, but it makes me also wonder, like, are they going to try to push for like 8K for like, pro enhancements, right? So,
Yeah, maybe for AI upscaling, though, but not natively. There's no
yeah,
way they can do
yeah,
that.
Yeah, it would have to use a lot of PSSR. I think that's what they call it.
Yeah,
yeah. I'm just
yeah,
saying it is something that I'm really curious to see, because typically when they do announce these games, they do show off that hey, it's using RE Engine, right? And this time around they didn't do that, so I have to wonder, like, you know, are we running on the new engine here, and they just haven't officially said it officially, like outright said it, right?
yeah. But like I said, the last couple of games that came out, like either the low graphical detail or whatever, so they could
Mm.
run last gen. So, like I said, it's not surprising because the last 5 games I think that came out were only on next gen. So, I am not remotely surprised about this.
Okay, so RE Engine aside, let's talk about the small bits of gameplay that we got to see in the trailer. Um, what were your initial thoughts on the gameplay that we've seen so far? Even though it's just very very small tidbits of what we can expect with this game.
I could definitely see a lot of maneuvering going around, but it's just really hard to like make out how it would affect the overall gameplay. There's just not enough for me to kind of make a judgment call on that.
Yeah, they're making a lot of steals and hype shots, right? So all that agility they're doing could be just context sensitive type stuff,
Mm.
like execution system. They have that in the game, so yeah, it's really hard to completely judge considering that unlike other games, take I don't know your Devil May Cry or your Resident Evil, right? They already had a set standard of how the games are, so we could like figure out what's what. But Onimusha, right? Since it's been gone for so long and the gameplay style has been consistently the same throughout the 4 games that came out for the most part, it's hard. It's really hard to make out what is going on here.
Mm. Um, so the main thing that I've noticed is, like, in the trailer, there's a lot of like these takedowns, and these aren't like these aren't like your typical takedowns that are like Eason based takedowns, because they do show the flash of light. So like we know that some form of Easons are returning for sure. What I don't know is, and this is what I'm kind of a little confused by, because I did notice a bit in the trailer as well, that it kind of looks like there's a return of like deflect Easons, or at least some new form of parry with deflecting now. Because like there's a point in the trailer where he like blocks a larger, or like guards against a larger enemy, and then there is like kind of like the ring of light that shows up when you get a deflect Eason, but instead of doing an Eason, he kind of just does like a throw with the enemy, you know. And I'm not entirely sure if that's supposed to be like a, you know, a deflect Eason, you know. So that's what I'm kind of confused about. I'm also not sure about like there's a couple of points where, like one in particular where you kind of see like this blue like fire magic kind of coming out, and I don't know if that's supposed to be like a charge attack, or if that's just magic fire or whatever, and like they're just changing the color to the elemental stuff, you know, if we're just not even going to get like elemental weapons, which I'm kind of concerned about as well. What do you guys think about that in particular?
I think my only real concern is how they handle like your character's evolution. Like, if it's consistent with previous games, well, obviously I'd be for that. But the last thing I want is having to deal with like all these stat-based gear, all these stats to upgrade. Like, just keep it simple. Like, it doesn't have to be super complicated.
I definitely do agree with that. Right? I don't want it to be like, say, Neo, for example, with how they handle their weapon systems and whatnot. If they're going to add stats, just keep it as very simple as possible. Like, the type of gear you're wearing, the outfit or whatever, will determine what kind of damage, defense, or health type stats you carry on with you, right? Or the weapon upgrades have a flat upgrade of, like, yeah, you're going to get massive damage just by upgrading, right? Keep it very simple as that. I prefer that over them just going full on RPG with this.
I agree. Yeah.
Another note too is that I really do hope they keep the elemental system. But like that's something that I wish Capcom kept for other games, like Devil May Cry, for example, which they technically did for 5 though, so I give them credit for that. But 4, it wasn't that much there. Because like it is part of the identity of the game, right? Having different elements to give you different advantage or different situations, you know.
Yeah, like so the main thing was like, okay, like different weapons excelled at different things, and you know, you get different types of magic attacks, which is the main reason why you're using different types of weapons. Like in Onimusha 1, for example, the Ryzen is like the most balanced sword. It's like it averages out on both attack and speed, whereas like Enryu is high on damage but slow on speed, and then Shippu is very fast but very low on damage, for example. But they all excel at something, right? Whereas like
one AoE, one Unga Bunga, and one just chopping about with a lightning.
Yeah, and then of course in like 2 they expand on that. We have like an Earth hammer, for example, that does like an AoE. They still have lightning and wind that do the same thing. They're just called different things. Fire sword as like the ultimate weapon, but it has a different type of attack than the one from Onimusha 1. And then an ice spear, which freezes enemies in place. And then 3 is a little bit different as well, where we get like a magma axe and a wind sword that, or not a wind sword, an air sword that slices enemies in half. Don't ask me how that's supposed to be different from air or wind, you know. Don't you see where this is confusing, right? We had light swords, which basically act like lightning, but they do their own thing. So yeah, we had a variety of different things, and they all kind of like excelled at different things, right? Um, so I am there with you where like I agree, like they keep that stuff in there because that's what made Onimusha, right? I don't want to see like here's the thing, like I don't mind if they copy some elements of games like Neo, for example, for gameplay. Just don't copy the loot system. I don't want to have to like as much as I love Neo, right? This is coming from me who loves that grind and loves going through like the loot to try to get the best like possible stats and stuff like that. I don't want to see that in Onimusha. I just want like let's return to basics. Let's try to not to make it over complicated, and let's just try to make it a fun game overall, right? I don't want to stress and grind overall. I just want to have fun, rank up my character the way that I would in other Onimusha games. Maybe exceed the level caps, of course, right? But and add in some additional things if this game is longer compared to the other games, right? Um, but don't do the same shit that Neo does. I don't think that's the case though, but I'll let you go here first before I continue
Yeah,
on with
since
that.
you said over level, right? How would you be okay with a system that there's like a limit break where once you level it up to the max level, you can break the limit or over level it to like a new state where you get bonus things with it, like either damage, different effects, or whatever.
I wouldn't mind it. Um,
Something that gives it more replayability
I
and
wouldn't
more use
mind
for the
it.
weapon.
I wouldn't mind it, and especially if it gives like more player customization, right? Like if you can customize the way that you want the weapon to perform, and like maybe they allow you to like reset it at any point that you want, right? Because I'm gonna assume that they're gonna probably apply like a new game plus, which we haven't had before in an Onimusha game, which would be very convenient, right? Especially if we have like a level break system, like you're mentioning, right? Um, yeah, I'm not opposed to it, especially if it can be done well.
All right, cool.
I did want
Okay.
to. Oh, go on.
That's another thing though. It's still gameplay related.
Okay.
I think Capcom should tackle um see the not only the environments though, but the puzzles. As you know,
Ooh.
like Capcom has a knack of taking away certain aspects of certain games over time.
Mm-hmm.
Case in point, look at Democrat 5. From 4 to 5, though, it's just straight up go from point A to point B and kill stuff, right? You
Yeah.
have no things to break up monotony like
Mm-hmm.
you did in the previous games. So no puzzle solving or exploration or anything like that. It's just point A to point B. Would you be okay with that and Onimusha or no? I already
Mm,
know the answer to that though, but
yeah, you know me. I'm probably gonna say no. Um, only because you and me are kind of alike in that, where like I do like having puzzles in these games. Well, in Devil May Cry, I'm kind of indifferent, but like for Resident Evil, right? Like I do like having those puzzles to break up monotony, right? Um, for Onimusha, if I could like make a suggestion that I don't know how you guys would feel about this, but like um, what I would do with the puzzles maybe if I was the one like making this game, I would try to have more environmental based puzzles that make use of the various elemental weapons because we kind of had that in Onimusha one, but um, after that the puzzles were more kind of straightforward, right?
You really are obsessed with that water puzzle from one.
No, 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 not that specifically, but just like okay, like okay, a part of that puzzle, right? Like when you're in one room and you have to use the fire sword, right, to like light up all the candles. Like imagine if like we had more kind of like puzzles like that, where like okay, like you have to like match certain things with like statues or whatever, right? And you have to use a specific element sword in that point in the game, right, in order to like open up this like path or whatever, right? Like stuff like that, I think would be very interesting.
but with that in mind, do you want the Judicature statues to be in Onimusha? Because like that's borderline what happened in 3.
You know, I'm not opposed. I'm not opposed, but like here's the thing. I don't want Onimusha to become Devil May Cry, right? This is something that I kind of like mentioned whenever I talk to like James about like Onimusha is like I don't mind Onimusha like changing to like modernize itself because I know for a fact like and you know as much as this hurts me to say like as much as I loved fixed camera angled Onimusha and Resident Evil and stuff like that, unfortunately like most people don't, right? And the reality of it is that they're probably going to modernize it, right? So I accept that. However, I don't want them to just like completely go like too overboard with Onimusha. I still want Onimusha to feel like Onimusha, and Devil May Cry to feel like Devil May Cry, right? Um,
Well, I want to add to that though. There's a big difference between being like Devil May Cry and taking aspects from Devil May Cry and fine tuning it to be like Onimusha. So like taking the Judicated statues though is not going to make it like Devil May Cry overnight. It's just taking an aspect from Devil May Cry.
which is a fair point. Yeah, I think like going off of that, right? I think it really depends on how they do that, right? Um, like one thing they could do, right, for gameplay purposes, because they cut this out from going in from Onimusha 2 to Onimusha 3, was Onimusha 2 had like these special inputs when you got these technique scrolls, right? And they completely got rid of that. Now, I'm all for having like unique inputs and different inputs for Onimusha to like kind of change up the combos and stuff like that. I'm not opposed to that. So like if they had like adjudicator statues to kind of like basically force you to learn how to use weapons in different ways, like you know using up your charge attacks and using up like different inputs and stuff like that to bring out special moves, like I'm all for that. Just I don't want to see like style meters and stuff like that in Onimusha. You know, again, because like I said, I would like that Onimusha stay Onimusha and Devil May Cry stay Devil May Cry, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna say because we were kind of talking about this a little bit earlier with the gameplay. Um, I don't think this is gonna be like Neo where we see the loot system and stuff like that. And the reason being is that like there's this particular point, and I'm just gonna show you the full screenshot of this particular shot that I dropped in the chat here earlier, where you do get to see souls, right? And you get to see one red soul and a couple of yellow souls. Still no like blue souls or any other souls, like color types like purple or green, for example. Um, I think this is a kind of a good indicator that we're not going to be seeing the loot system, which I'm so happy because like I've seen people kind of go around saying like, oh no, this is absolutely like a Souls type like clone, and I'm like I mean, well I'm not
I mean, honestly, I
necessarily.
don't blame him considering how it looks.
I'm like I don't I'm here's the thing like and maybe this is a bit of a hot take, I don't know, but like I'm not necessarily opposed if it kind of borrows elements from Souls, right? Because again, like I'm just happy that we're having an Onimusha game, right? I at the same time though, just kind of the things that I'm noticing in this trailer, I don't think that's what Capcom is going for. I think what they're doing is kind of more like in lines of like imagine Ghost of Tsushima, but as Onimusha, right? Where it's got a lot of Onimusha elements and a lot of Capcom elements to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Actually, speaking of which, since we only see these souls, right? Um, how would you all feel if they got rid of the purple soul mechanic from 2 and 3 and Dawn of Dreams? Or just maybe reintroduce the green souls from Genma, or maybe just introduced a whole new system altogether to like replace that, you know?
Okay, so I need a reminder. What does the purple cells do again?
So purple souls, when you absorb them, they let you go into a pseudo Oni form, uh, where you get powered up. You do like special magic attacks, and your overall attack power gets increased.
Okay, once you absorb the last soul, right, you're forced to use it, right? Because I remember not liking
It
that aspect. if I'm thinking it's the right one.
That was the case in 2. In 3 in Dawn of Dreams, you trigger it through, I think it's L3 or R3 off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah, because
It,
in 2 I didn't like that because like it came at the worst time and I didn't want to do it for that reason.
yeah, they rectified that issue in particular in 3. But yeah, 2 is the one that had that issue in particular. The green
Okay.
soul mechanic, if you don't remember, that's the one where if you had green souls, it's similar to the purple soul mechanic, where once you absorb all 5, and I don't remember if that was if you had to trigger that one. I think you did have to trigger that one. That's the one that puts you in a state where you are invincible for a short time, and your health is constantly regenerating at that point.
Okay, at that point, I would actually keep the purple ones and let me activate my, only for my devil trigger,
Hmm.
as an option. And for the green ones, either I would actually work it to be something else, maybe as an enhancer towards your actual magic or your overall stats. Like absorb enough though, you just get stronger, and you can stack it on top of it, whatever else you do,
Hmm.
but make it more rare. Yeah, I will rework green if they're able to bring that shit back. But purple, yeah, I say keep it the same though. If they still have their advanced forms as an option.
What about you, Sing?
I would say for like the greens, maybe just limit it to certain enemy types.
Interesting. Um, yeah, like I really hello, miss. I really I'm really not sure. Because I would like the purple souls to return. Maybe let you upgrade them in some capacity or customize them in some capacity. But I also thought, like, what if, like, and maybe the color type doesn't really matter so much if the end result is what you end up getting, right? Um, what if you could customize purple souls to behave like green souls, or just behave in different ways to where you get different benefits after like uh, activating that form, right? So like maybe you do get that attack power and you get the special magic attack, but at the cost of not having health regen or something else, right? Whereas you could trade that off for like having health regen and maybe higher defense for a time, right? Things like that I think would be kind of interesting, but I don't know if that's something that they want to do in this situation, if that mechanic is even like returning, right?
Uh, yeah, I don't think I have nothing to add on that one. Then so much else. That's a
Hmm.
piece.
Yeah, I'm
uh
just gonna go with the wait and see.
Gotcha. Oh, actually, I have one last question before we move on to our next topic. Because Dawn of Dreams, they had like a lot of weapons, and some of the weapons were like returning from like they were basically Samanosuke's weapons returning from the previous games. Do you think that's something that we might see, where we could see like some of the classic weapons return, just completely redesigned under RE Engine for obvious reasons, right? Um, on top of new and original weapons, or do you think we're just going to strictly see new and original weapons if we even get that?
Ideally, I would love to see old weapons from the series from original games.
Hmm.
Ideally, but realistically, I think it's going to stick with wherever we're going to get right. Because Onimusha, technically speaking, at least with one character, always has a small pool of weapons for the most part, kind of sort of.
Yeah.
So I think Capcom's going to focus on making new ones, right? But if I'm be honest though, I would love to have old weapons to come back. Because like I'm still bitter on how they handled it in Onimusha 3 for the West, where you need to beat the extra game mode to unlock weapons.
Ye-
Unless you're in Japan, where you just need a save file to fucking get the weapons,
Yeah,
which
so
is
you
easier.
have to go through the Phantom Realm. and then get those weapons through New Game Plus. Whereas, like you said, save data is how you unlock them in Japan.
Yeah, I was not happy about that because I'm like, what's the fucking point of this, man? You guys are stupid.
Oh, you know what's speaking of which, you know what's kind of weird about that is at that time too, if you played Blade Warriors, right? If you had a save data of Onimusha 3 and went back to Blade Warriors, you unlocked an additional character for that game, and then vice versa. Save data of Blade Warriors unlocks the alternate panda costume from Onimusha 1 in Onimusha 3. So I just think that's kind of hilarious, but um, I do think I think it's going to be interesting to see if we do have like returning weapons or new weapons altogether. I think what's going to be also interesting too is if we're going to get any like new element types at all, or if we're just going to stick to the standard lightning, wind, and fire, and maybe get like a couple of additional ones on top of that, because we don't know how long this game is going to be, and we don't know how many weapons we're getting, right? And that's going to be the key thing. The other thing too, and I think this is going to be maybe an interesting thing too to think about, is like if this game is super long, right? We might get like, okay, let's say for example we have a lightning based weapons, right? Maybe we might have more than one in every particular category, right? We might have like 3 of each, right? Where even though we don't have a lot of variety in the elements, we might have a lot of variety in the types of weapons we see, right? Where we might see like multiple different swords or spears or axes and hammers and stuff like that, right? But under different elemental categories, right? And they all perform and act differently with different types of magic, right? Which could be different.
Ideally, that would work actually. To like, if you want to keep the weapon pool small but increase the depth of the games, yeah, just allows you to choose the element for said weapon instead of just give us a dedicated element to weapon.
You could even take it a step further and have elements outright affect what combos come out too.
Yeah, or combo strings. Like if it's lightning, you do faster strings. If it's like fire, you do heavier ones but more damage. It's just for food for thought on that one. Yeah, that could work out if they decide to do that.
One other thing, because I was kind of just thinking about this. I think in Onimusha Soul, which this game isn't canon by any means, but there is a character that has like 2 Oni jewels and 1 gauntlet, and I think there was one character that had like an Oni jewel that had 2 elements, right? They could go that route where like, okay, like let's say hypothetically this is Musashi, right? Imagine if he had a weapon that, or technically a dual wielded weapon, right? Like maybe it's dual wielding swords, right? That have both fire and ice on it at the same time, as opposed to just fire or just ice, right?
Okay, with that in mind too, do you think they should do like a combo system where if you have 2 elements together, one you get like a special effect, like for ice and fire, for example, you get like a fiery ice effect where it burns, but it also does cold damage or whatever type of
Sure, like
status effect.
I'm all for that. Like I think you could do some really interesting stuff with that, you know?
I think it's like well, unrelated though, and technically not the same thing, but get your impact. If you have 2 different elements, being used at the same time, though, it has a unique effect with it. So like I can imagine, like Onimusha doing the same thing.
Actually, also Neo kind of had the same thing as well, where if you stack elemental statuses on enemies, that would get them I forget the name of the status, but it's like it causes them to lose health and not regen their own stamina, right?
Mhm.
So I think maybe that could work. Who knows? Okay, so with that in mind, what are some of the things that you hope to see in the future with either announcements or in the full game that we haven't seen so far?
Honestly, I just want more gameplay. I want more footage because I want to see what what they're trying to sell me. That's all. That's all I really want right now as far as the immediate. Now, what I want in the final game, truth be told, just make it a solid length and just, like, add more replayability. Because that's one thing that Onimusha does technically suffer from is the lack of replayability for the most part, other than like, New Game Plus. But I'll be honest, though, New Game Plus does get kind of boring just how the game is structured. So I just want more replayability for Onimusha.
What about you, Sing?
Oh, Singing did. Resting pepperoni. There.
Oh, I think he's taking care of Doge. So I'll go while we wait for Sing, but no, you're good, Sing. I'll just go while we wait for you, things to kind of settle down on your end. Yeah, so like I think what I would want to see more so is I want to see weapons. You know, like I want to see that we are getting actual like unique, dedicated elemental weapons, right? Because you know, even though we did talk about like the customization and stuff like that, which again I'm not necessarily opposed to, I do also want to see like kind of you know we're going kind of back to form, right, where we get like our traditional based like Oni magic weapons, right, which I think is going to be really cool to see, especially under RE engine. um I I want to see if maybe later down the line, because we don't know if we're gonna get like unique costumes and stuff like that. Because costumes have always been a thing for Onimusha, but they've always been generally like joke costumes for the most part. I would like to see like maybe like recreations of the old characters' costumes, so like Samanosuke's Onimusha 1, 3, and Dawn of Dreams costumes, and then maybe like Jubei's from Onimusha 2, for example. Um, you know, maybe some original stuff too. Um, whether that's pre-order stuff or stuff that we can unlock, that's you know remain to be seen. But it's stuff that I would like to see. Uh, and aside from that, like you, I want to see more gameplay, and I'm really hoping they announce like a demo somewhere down the line that I can play, and not this limited time stuff that they've done for like Resident Evil, for example, or I think Devil May Cry even had it at one point as well. Um,
Uh, Technically, yes, it did have limited time demos for the most part, but they did release a demo right afterwards anyway. So
mm.
like,
So I think the only exception was like Kunitsugami, where that didn't have like this limited time demo. If I'm thinking like recent Capcom games, so like that's what I want to see. Is like I want to see a
and
demo
Street
as
Fighter
well.
6.
Oh, Street. Well, yeah, but that was more like beta, right? So
No,
that's
Street
all.
Fighter 6 has a demo.
Oh, does it? Okay, cool.
Yep.
Yeah, same with Dead Rising. Although that was well after the fact.
That happened after the game came out, didn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm talking like before release, right? Like I
Before,
want.
Yeah, like all the games you mentioned did have a demo right before release, right? With the exception of I want to say Resident Evil 2.
Mhm.
3 might had a pre-release demo, but 2 got a new demo. No, yeah, it got a
Two
new demo after Resident
after.
Evil 3 was announced, I think.
it was pretty much the same demo, just with the time limit removed.
Yeah. I'm kidding.
Yeah, Kitty wants out in a second. Um, so uh, so while I deal with my cat, if you want to go really quick, Sing, and mention like some of the things that you'd want to see, whether it be like as the game's announcing new updates or just them showing off stuff after the fact, I'll let you go here.
I think basically my big thing is just a bit more shirts on how like progression is handled, like just how like stats or upgrading is handled. Just what kind of weapons we get, if we get any, of course, like just pretty much like anything like more to do with the game itself.
Mhm.
And like I wouldn't mind seeing more environments as well, like just to see if we're just getting the usual like feudal castle sort of environments we see in a lot of Onimusha titles, or do we get more outdoor environments as well? Maybe even like stuff you don't normally see, like maybe like a winter mountain based environment.
That'd be interesting. I mean, we kind of had a winter environment in 3, but it wasn't like a very long segment, unfortunately. Um, you know what, too? Like, I think just different seasons, right? That would be also interesting to see, even if it's not necessarily natural uh, for that time of year in Japan whenever this game takes place,
Winter.
right? Um, I think it'd be really interesting. Um, Environments as well. Um, we haven't seen like a full on town in Onimusha outside of like the merchant town in Onimusha 2, right?
Yeah, let's go with that one
And
too.
Dawn of Dreams, you kind of go through an abandoned town, but we've never actually seen like a I don't know, we haven't seen like a full on like city, right? And Kyoto this time around, where it says we're gonna be in Kyoto era, or Edo period or Edo era Kyoto, right? How much of Kyoto are we gonna see? Are we gonna see the actual like city of Kyoto, right? Are we gonna go through like major like parts of Kyoto, right, that are well known, right? Um, that I think is gonna be really interesting, right?
You just gave me an idea as well. I can't comment if Dawn of Dreams did this, but wouldn't that also open up the potential for a lot of side content in the form of like quests and whatnot?
It could. Um, it could. My concern at that point is just like, is it going to be handholdy like Dawn of Dreams, where we constantly have a second playable character, and you know, do we have to babysit that character and stuff like that? Or is it just
Define babysit. Like, you mean like have just have a companion around, or
having a
what?
companion around that you also have to worry about their health and manage what they do, and also be able to
Oh, for
switch to
fuck's
them?
sakes,
Yeah,
really?
yeah, yeah. That's why I don't like Dawn of Dreams. So like, that's one of the reasons why I don't like Dawn of Dreams, is like you have to micromanage in that game, and like I just don't want to deal with that. I just want to like, hey, it, it's standard for Onimusha to have a second playable character, at least a second playable character, right? Onimusha 2 technically standardized having more than two, but like in general, we've always had at least one other playable character, at least, right? So I'm not opposed to seeing a second playable character. Just give them a dedicated segment like it has been in Onimusha 2 and 3, where they, I don't have to micromanage them. I don't have to worry about their health until I actually play them in their own dedicated segments, right? Um, so I guess that's another thing that I want to see. But yeah.
It
Um,
also would open up the potential for like an unlockable bonus where you get to play as them the full time in the next run.
True, true. Um, so
Shit,
that
you
would
know,
be
honestly, it
something.
would be up to me. I would rather have the second companion be around me at all times and let me switch between characters whenever I feel like playing a different character. But like, there are times where like, when Witcher 2, I'm like, man, I just want to play a different character instead of just just having segments.
Yeah, I mean, I get the appeal for it, right? I just feel like Dawn of Dreams didn't really do that well. They did it more in a way where it just feels like very, well, aside from it being very handholdy, it felt very like gatekeeping, because like, okay, you have to go back into those chapters in order to play as a different like um character, to progress through that mission in a different way to get different items that you should have been able to get at that point, but because they gatekeep you, because you have to progress using specific characters and their character abilities, it artificially prolongs the game, you know, um, as opposed to making it feel a little bit more natural, where like, okay, like, you could just go through the game and play as those characters at any point, right? That's the problem with Dawn of Dreams, but I'm not here to criticize Dawn of Dreams today.
Yeah, but knowing that too, like, well, whatever happened in Dawn of Dreams is Dawn of Dreams. Like, this is a new game, so I'll see. It
True,
won't be the same thing here.
true, true. Um, well, yeah. So yeah, we don't know how, if there is even a second playable character, but generally there is. Um, so we don't really know like how they're gonna handle that if they do, and um, I guess the thing that I would want to see is like, um, bring back trading because both Onimusha 2 and Dawn of Dreams had that. Although I think Dawn of Dreams made it less RNG based, if I'm not mistaken, and they made it also tied to the shop, which is tied to your save mirrors, which that's not the biggest deal in the world. I'm fine with that, but I also, um, if we're having like let's say there's five alternate playable characters, right? I wouldn't mind seeing like the bond system return from two, just to see like different alternate like side quest results and stuff like that if it means more replay value. But that's just my opinion.
I mean, depending on how they handle this, if they choose to do so, they could also use it as an excuse to bring back the cameo system from DMC5.
Ooh, okay. Okay.
Although I highly doubt that.
Yeah, it would be a good excuse though, but at the same time though, they fumbled the bag hard with Democrat 5, so they definitely got to set the game up without me.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, that could be interesting. Oh man, that's I think that's opening up a whole new can of worms though. At that point, it's like the sky's the limit, right, as to what they could and couldn't do. Um, Shoot, like I guess at that point too, though, like, oh, you know what? We didn't talk about this, but like, I guess we could bring this up a little bit. Um, Onimusha's 1 and 2, they had it where like your main character was able to use both a bow and an arrow as well as a matchlock rifle. Uh, and then by 3, they removed the matchlock rifle. And then I think in Dawn of Dreams, like only specific characters had the ability to shoot. So, like, do you think they should return the bow and arrow and or matchlock rifle? And should they maybe expand on the system from 3, where we had different ammunition types?
Yeah, they definitely should bring back firearms. Cause I see like why not? Like for starters, and 2, they could also BS it and have us have infinite ammo just by infusing it with magic.
Okay.
Yeah, so like instead of just having to go around and get ammunition types again, because like it is pretty tedious to do that though. I'm gonna be honest. Instead of doing that, they'll just give us infinite ammo, right, and have it dedicated as well as like a secondary option for combat. I like I think was it Rise of Ronin or one thing. It's yeah like a Dragon Ishin where the gun style have a small gun and just have it as a part of a combo string.
Okay. I actually, kind of going off of that, do you think instead of just having regular like man-made bows and arrows and firearms, do you think they should have like either demon or oni-made weapons as well that you could use?
I mean, yeah, I think those weapons would be more effective than human-made. To be quite honest, though, but you know what? If an AR-16 or an M4 can get the job done only with 3, then you know what? Anything is possible.
We had no, you know what it was? We had a Spaz 15 in Onimusha 3, and then what the fuck else was it? It was a P90, I think. Those were the two.
Yeah, with Jock's P90, I believe.
Yeah, it was. Hey, do you want to have tactical gear, like tactical 21st century gear? Okay, have fun. So, yeah, no, I mean, like, I think that you could also kind of justify having like those kinds of weapons too, right? And then especially like kind of like what you're saying, have the elements kind of be already automatically applied. Like imagine, okay, imagine instead of like just customizing it right off the bat, right? Like what if it was just based off of like the weapon you have equipped, right? Like that's the element that you would get instead of just having to pick up the ammo type like that, right?
Sure. Okay, you know what? Since we're you brought that up though, do you think Onimusha should have weapon swap? So
Yes.
they have a whole D-pad free.
Yes, and I will tell you why. Because the Warlords remaster already implemented it, and even though it's very
Yeah.
basic and it is flawed and I think that's partly because it might be because of the way that the game is like, the way the game runs and how it functions, right? That maybe moving while switching might have borked the game, right? I don't know. Um, because of the remaster, it's very basic, but it is there. But it's such a good quality of life feature that I'm like, it's basically if they had Devil May Cry weapon switching, I'm not opposed to it, right? Because that's actually a good quality of life feature that Onimusha could actually really benefit from, right? So yes, I would like to see that.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess the next question though is sort of weapon related. What type of weapons do you want? I want Tophus.
Ooh, okay, so like, you know what we've never actually had in the series as of yet? Um, we haven't had uh, clubs or I think they're called tonba. Um, they're like these big,
Giant ones, mixed
yeah,
with
yeah. They're basically essentially these big metal like spiked or like jaded like clubs basically, or like they almost look like baseball bats. We've never had
those
anything like
giant
that.
guys carry around, right? During that
Yeah,
era.
yeah, and that's typically a weapon associated with Onis. So like, hey, why not, right? Um, the other thing, and kind of like how I mentioned before, if we are playing as Miyamoto Musashi, um, I'm not opposed to seeing like the Bishaman sword return or like a variation of that weapon, because we know that like, okay, like, in Onimusha 3, there's the Bishaman whip, for example, right? So I'm not opposed to weapons like that returning. However, what I would really want to see is, okay, if this is Musashi, he crafts his own like Bishaman or Oni weapon, right, out of a wooden ore, right, and that's kind of what I really want to see, right? Um, just because the history and Musashi fanboy in me just would really just gush at the idea of just them like doing a really cool alternate take on an actual like historical thing. So I think that's what I would want to see.
Okay.
What about Sing? What kind of weapons would you want to see?
Explosives.
I'm not really too picky about weapons per se. I just rather have them make sense, like maybe not too out of there, if you get what I mean. Like I wouldn't make Musashi wield a hammer, but like just variations of swords would be enough for me.
Well, I mean, hammers aren't a realm of they're out of the realm of possibility here because
I mean, I'm not saying like you can't have a hammer in an Onimusha game. I'm just saying I wouldn't imagine him using a hammer.
So you use something that's more elegant towards his character and persona, basically. So like spear or anything like that.
actually there's something he could have, because you bring this up, Sang, right? Um, Instead of dual wielding swords, and because Neo 2 kind of introduced this, dual wielding hatchets.
I guess it really depends. I would think if it fits Musashi, it would make sense.
Mhm.
But yeah, I guess it really depends. Like, and of course we all know like Musashi in general has like been creative with stuff. So I would say like yeah, it's just really hard for me to decide. I don't want to like have too much variety, if you know what I mean. I would just rather keep it simple. Like just have enough to justify like different weapon switches, but not enough to like make it too overwhelming for someone new to the series.
I think that's fair. Yeah, like, and especially like if it's more focused, right? Like I could see that point because like and I don't want to harp on Dawn of Dreams too much, right? One of the things that I think is actually good in that game, despite it being kind of maybe overwhelming for like newcomers, is that there's a lot of weapons in that game, right? Um, Now, I actually do like that aspect of that game, but I could see why that would be overwhelming if they add in like too much to work with, right? And especially like if it's like an issue of like, okay, well, like because of how much there is, right? That's um, not only would it be overwhelming, it might cause a thing of like, well, some of these weapons get overlooked because of how many weapons there are, right?
Yeah, I think we see that even already sometimes with like RE4, for example. Like, there's gonna be some weapons in there that nobody ever really bothers with outside of like upgrading for like achievements and whatnot. There's always that like elite few, if you know what I'm talking about.
Challenge runs.
If, in
Yeah, but
fairness
how many
though,
people are gonna be doing those?
in fairness though, even if the sandbox is big or small though, you always want to have one weapon that's not going to be useful. Like, shit, even in the case of Onimusha, right? Onimusha 1, the weapon that's used at least amongst the enthusiasts is definitely the wind weapon.
Yeah, yeah, that is
So
that is
it's
true.
gonna happen regardless how big your pool is. So I definitely do agree with Singh's sentiment,
Mhm.
but at the same time though, like they definitely should spice it up for the Capcom fans, let alone the new players.
Yeah, I think that's also a fair point. I think there's got to be a fine balance, right? Not too much, but not too little, right?
Exactly.
Because you don't want to have it where like, okay, well, there's too many weapons and it feels overwhelming, or we just completely ignore certain weapons or weapon types, right? Because we don't know how they're going to be doing this, right? Um, but at the same time, right, it could also just be a thing of like, well, if it's too little, right, it kind of feels like there's not a whole lot to work with, right, and it becomes very formulaic and very samey feeling, right, because you don't have that variety that otherwise would be there with a vast variety of weapons, right?
Yeah, case in point, Onimusha 1, you only have three, technically four weapons.
Yeah, yeah, and then obviously with two that gets expanded to technically five. Three, it's if we're counting the weapons from one, that's like, let's see, um, that's about 11 weapons total, not including the shells, right? If we're just talking elemental weapons, right? So like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I would say on average, right, we should be seeing at least about like 6 or 7 for one character, right? Um, Now, if they do more, right, you're not gonna hear complaints from me because I'm gonna have a good time either way, right? Um, but I do think there should be a good balance, right? And it really just ultimately depends on how long this game is, how much they plan on doing with this game, right? Because they could always do, like, for all we know, right, uh, DLC expansions, right, which would be insane, right? But like, you never know, right? We could have expansions where they let you carry over the stuff from the main game, and that might add in more weapons, more stuff to use that you could use both in DLC and in the main game. Um, I don't want to get ahead of myself with that one, but that is always a possibility, right? And that's not even including like pre-order stuff, which might also increase that weapon pool a little bit even more, right? So
Yeah,
Yeah,
most I could see if they ever do pre-order stuff, it's either just going to be like extra like resources to upgrade, or it could just be costumes. That's usually how they go about it. I wouldn't think they'd outright put in like completely different weapon types behind DLC. Maybe variations of weapons, like because I know they've done that with RE2, but I wouldn't say outright like completely
Ye-
different weapon types.
yeah. I mean, well, yeah, because I was gonna say DMC5, but even DMC5, it's just um, weapon skins that add in like an additional like move or change up the property of those things, right? Um,
Hey, you know what? It works, right?
yeah. So I mean, like, yeah, because like at most, right, for pre-order stuff, I think like they're gonna do like here's classic Samanosuke, right, or like here's Onimusha 3 Samanosuke, or maybe they'll add in like here's all the classic like main protagonist costumes, right, which I think would be really ideal, right? Um, and let's say
Yeah,
hypothetically too, right, just really quick, they add in the evolution stuff where we do see the gear and the equipment change over time as you level that stuff up. Imagine if like the pre-order costumes are also retroactive in that way, where you see them level up as well if you level up the armor, for example, right? I'm just saying. But you're gonna say, Brandon?
yeah, for DLC though, I wager they're just gonna do early unlocks. Like you get like a particular weapon early, and you get some currency early, like orbs or whatnot.
Hmm.
With standard stuff for Capcom, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking they're just gonna do.
They could always go the extra mile with costumes and just do it like what they did with Dead Rising, where they included like costumes from other franchises as well.
Bro, if I play as Dante Onimusha, that would be immersion breaking and it's hilarious.
It come full circle.
Wait, hold on,
Yeah.
hold on. But not playing in a panda costume or like a cowboy costume where your gauntlet is
Okay, yeah,
looking like
there's
a
no way they're not gonna have like companion costume of
Okay.
some form.
like.
Okay. For one, no, because that's canon. And
Okay. But you know what? Can we talk about the best costume in Onimusha 3? Jacques' like Japanese merchant costume where he has the fucking serve bot as a gauntlet instead.
oh yeah, that's right. He has a certified.
This is a great costume. I love it. Ah, man. Yeah, yeah, actually, you know what, Singh, you bring up a good point because you know, I don't think that's really out of the realm of possibilities either. Because like Dawn of Dreams, actually, kind of a cool thing that they did in that game. They had costumes in reference to like Street Fighter and like Chaos Legion, for example, right? Um, so you never know,
And
right?
give him a Ryu costume, right?
Yeah, I think they had a Ryu or a Ken costume. I don't remember. They had Sieg from Chaos Legion. Um, I don't remember off the top of my head all the alternate costumes in Dawn of Dreams. But they did have like um, costumes in reference to other Capcom games for sure. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think you're actually onto something here, Sing.
I mean, it's not like if they ever decide to include like Street Fighter costumes, they could easily reuse what they've done before with Ryu and Ken in other games, like either in SF6 or in Dead Rising.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they had Chun Li and Cammy costumes in that game. They had a Guile costume. Um,
Or Dom Dreams.
yeah, for Dawn of Dreams. Yeah, it was a Ken costume, not a Ryu
Oh,
costume.
which
Oh no,
which
there was a Ryu
Cammy
costume.
outfit?
Um, you know the her classic one, the one with the beret and the
Or
um,
leotard?
yeah.
All right, good. They're not cowards.
Yeah, so I'm just saying, like Sing is onto something. They might actually they might do some shit like
Bro
that. And
cooked.
I mean, like I said, if they could easily do it for Dead Rising, they could easily do it for Onimusha. Nothing stopping them.
Copyright.
Although I think the part of the reason why Street Fighter costumes showed up in that game was because at the time that was Ono working on that game, and that was the only Onimusha game that he worked on. But I think that kind of makes sense
I'm
though.
pretty sure he wasn't involved with Street Fighter until after Dawn of Dreams, I think.
No, I think he was actually part of Street Fighter beforehand because he wasn't a producer at the time when he was at Capcom, or at least prior to Onimusha. Right? I
No,
think
I
he
think when he
did work on
started
Street
off,
Fighter.
he was just a sound designer, I think.
Yeah, I think he did work on Street Fighter some capacity prior to Street Fighter 4 and Onimusha Dawn of Dreams. Shit, I think he was actually part of Capcom Fighting Evolution, where it was.
I don't think he directed that one. He might have
Yeah.
been involved in some form, but I can't remember what it was. I do
Hmm.
recall that Dawn of Dreams was the first thing he worked on Onimusha-wise, because part of the sound designing duties, I think, was in one of the previous games, but I can't remember which one.
But never mind that though. Remember, Onimusha Soul it was the glorified Capcom crossover. So, in theory,
Yeah.
we could see other Capcom characters. It's just by that if it's canon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
bring back
So
a Battle Network costume, or even a Zero costume. Because I
so
think those two were in. Well, I know for sure Battle Network and Mega Man was in Blade Warriors, right?
Battle Network. I think
yes. Blade
so.
Warriors had Battle Network Mega Man, and I think ZX0.
Yeah.
Well, I wouldn't say ZX0, but yeah, it would be like Zero Series Zero, so
Yeah.
that style. So
And also, just for reference, yes, he was a producer for Capcom Fighting Evolution just before Dawn of Dreams.
okay, so
So,
yeah,
so yeah, just around that time. And well, technically, that wasn't even the first game that he produced. The first game being Chaos Legion, actually, ironically enough, which I actually do like that game. But it's weird how things kind of turned out after the fact. But yeah, no, I think costumes like that are not out of the realm of possibility. Um, though I have to wonder what kind we're gonna see if it's just gonna be exclusively costumes in reference to other franchises, or is it also gonna be stuff that's like in reference to the other characters, which I'm more so what I'm hoping for, or just original stuff too, if it's cool.
they could easily do both because again, wouldn't be the first time they've done something like that where they've done both inner like franchise and outer franchise outfits.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think we've talked a lot about like what we were kind of hoping for and what we want to see in the future, right? Any final thoughts that we want to share on Way of the Sword? I was gonna say Way of the Samurai here, but any final thoughts on Onimusha Way of the Sword as far as what we've seen, what we're hoping to see, um, anything in relation at all before we wrap up?
I think at the end of the day, I just pray I can actually run the damn game.
True.
Because yeah,
Yeah.
something tells me I don't think even if PC is not an option for me somehow, I doubt this thing would run well on a Series S.
And get a PS5.
No, I'm not paying $1,000 for that.
$1,000 for you?
Put
Man, still one. In fact, go over the border and buy one. God
Yeah,
damn.
put that shit on layaway.
Oh my god.
God damn, bro. You have options. Do it.
You're in Canada. You have layaway, I'm sure.
Look, if I'm spending a lot of money, may as well be on a new PC.
Yeah, it's called a PS5.
You're really gonna do
No,
it
I'd
like
rather
that?
keep my library intact.
Alrighty, Brandon, you got any final thoughts on Way of the Sword here?
Please be good. That's all I ask for. No, make it fun. Give us more freaking information. And maybe bump up the release date to 2025, Just saying.
Yeah.
I think that's the only game coming out next year. Is Monster Hunter Wild, so it'll be interesting if Capcom actually don't release another game afterwards.
Yeah. I you know, anybody that's been watching me for a while knows that I'm pretty excited. I'm happy to see that Onimusha is alive again. The one thing that I'm hoping for, and we didn't talk about this at all, is that I do hope, and I do think that this is going to be likely, is that um, given that we are getting a new Onimusha game, I would like for them to do more HD ports to kind of hold us over for the release of this game. Whether that's individual releases of each game that hasn't been remastered or just a full on collection. I'd be happy with either or at this point. And we don't know if Capcom even plans on doing full on remasters anymore, or if they want to do like just straight ports onto PS4 and PS5, or just a GOG release, a re-release of Onimusha 3's PC port, for example. Even though I wouldn't be necessarily thrilled about like seeing, okay, it's just straight ports of those games with no remasters, so to speak.
Oh my god, you're right. I forgot. They should
Yeah.
definitely re-release the old games first. Shit, that actually might be on the table. So I hope. But like,
Yeah, like
we remastered 2 and 3 already. Damn it.
yeah, like I wouldn't be happy about like, okay, if they like, don't get me wrong, like I'd be happy that I could play the games on some modern platform, right? But I also wouldn't be happy because it's not remastered, and it means that it's also limited to like a singular platform. Not to mention the fact that like, okay, let's say for example like uh Blade Warriors, for example, like that gets just a standard PlayStation 4 PS5 backwards compatible port. It means that we wouldn't be able to play that game online, and I would really love to see like Capcom do like a remaster of that game and add an online support for it, so that way I could just like play that game for fun with some of you guys, right? Because it, even though it's a bad like Smash clone, like hell, I'd be down to play it, just for fun and just for shits and gigs, like it's whatever. But then like another game too that I'm thinking about is like Onimusha Tactics. That's a game that's not even canon, but like I'd love to be able to see it not be locked on Game Boy Advance, for example. Like so. So that's what I'm hoping to see. I'm hoping to see more remasters and ports, so that way we do get to see all these games be playable on across multiple platforms, to kind of hold us over before the official release of Way of the Sword. That's my biggest hope. But otherwise, I'm very excited. I can't wait for this game to come out, and I can't wait for more information to come out, because you bet your ass I will be talking about that as much as possible. So, anyway, with that said, I guess we could do outros. So, Sing, where can we find you, good sir?
Well, you can just find me on Twitter under bestsing_long, where I don't really post anything. I just retweet shit. That's it. If I ever feel like doing it.
Alrighty, and then Brandel, where can we find you, good sir?
Well, I have X sex account, ImmortalBrandel. I have a link tree. You can see my other affiliations and socials that way. I do have a Blue Sky account, but I hardly post on social media as is anymore. So my Blue Sky is about sense of purposes dead. And Trophy Toe is not worth the hype. So yeah.
Alrighty. Well, you all can find me on YouTube, obviously, as BioDevil_Dom. I'm also on X or Twitter or whatever the fuck you want to call it these days. And I'm sometimes on Reddit, very rarely. I just basically post shit on. I basically just post these videos on there. I just shamelessly plug on Reddit, so nothing really there exciting unless if you want to share my content some more. So, otherwise, I also have a link tree so that way you can see everywhere that I'm at, but it's typically just BioDevil_Dom. That all said, we hope you all enjoyed the very first episode of the newest season of the BioDevils podcast, and hopefully we'll have some more along the way for 2025 to kind of hold us over for Onimusha and anything else we might be looking forward to throughout the year. So anyway, we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.